Distinguished dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, after hearing Jaggi and Rudra and Admiral, I don't think there's much for me to say. What I'll try and do is, I was told to give a 20-minute talk. I don't think it's it's fair on all of you. There is an issue that you all brought out about keeping UDA separate from MDA, and it is a lot of discussion on that. I happen to think the other way. The understanding of the MDA, it's a cylinder of awareness that we have to create, right from space to the air above the sea, on the sea and under sea. There is a lot of correlation to be done. If you find a ship hanging around some place where there are undersea cables for too long, you know what the intentions are. If you want to correlate, you need a cylinder of awareness, and not by divorcing MDA from UDA, but rather dovetailing. This also ties into things like goods that you mentioned. Fishermen go where the fish go. They don't go where you want the fishermen to. If you do not have an idea of where the migratory species are moving, then you cannot forecast where IUU fishing is going to take place. The biggest problem that this small SIDS nations have is that they don't, their entire economic, prosperity is being taken away. For example, in the Maldives, what one fisherman fishes in a year is done by a Chinese trawler in 1 day. So it's impacting them. So once you do a correlation between UDA and the surface, it gives them a much better understanding of what is happening underwater. So to my mind, public good, the issue of that I mentioned of undersea cables, all these should be looked at one comprehensive understanding. Once you get into issues like the mechanics of UDA, yes, I understand that it's a very complex and opaque situation. But this is something that I thought I'll just share with you. The Ministry of Shipping, I didn't hear the question correctly. Who was somebody in the dark? So you've been kept in the dark by the Navy also. No, the point is, I was in chair, I'd gone across to the Minister of Shipping those days, and we have transferred all the data that we had, or most of the data that we had from our project in IMAC and the IFC-ICWA, Ministry of Shipping Operations. So it's not that we are trying to keep that away. And the new project that has been cleared by the government of the National Maritime Domain Awareness, NMDA, is going to take all stakeholders from the entire government of India, pool in their understanding of MDA, and will be shared. So that is the plan that is available for NMB. This issue of data not being shared for models, somebody raised this. I know that NTRO had done a project on underwater sound, and what they said was that you pick data which is available in open source, including the NPS data, etc. Then make your prototype based on that data, and the quality of your prototype will then be selected. The prototype will be selected and thereafter populated by data which is classified. So that is the way we're going, not by pushing out all data from NOTPAC, etc., to all of you. As regards your question, Jackie, about this oceanographic vessel. So just now, NSCS is going through a recapitalization of survey and oceanographic vessel. What they're planning to do is take stock of all that we have with NIO, etc., with our own hydro ships. The next oceanographic vessels, they want to give them oceanographic capability. So once you get all that, they want to aggregate and then figure out what our nation requires in the larger perspective. So that that discussion or It's been titled as recapitalization. I was also wondering what recapitalization, but that is how it goes. Regarding problem statements, Arnab, this is the way we are going now. And it is very important that problem statements are given rather than solutions to people like all of you. You are sitting here, you got somebody from Sarvam, who was all AI and all that. So we give problem statements, not solutions. And it's very typical for us in the uniform to start giving solutions. We think we have the solution, but an innovator has much better ideas. So problem statements is the right way to go. And I'm very happy that all these IDEX and Swavalaman start with problem statements. So these are the points I wanted to give. I don't know if you want to listen to 20 minutes of my talk. All I thought I'll just try and pick up a few points. And I had actually for the challenges in the because of the opacity and the complexity of the underwater domain, I wanted to talk about challenges and realities that exist in the underwater domain. And I classified them under threats, targets, terrain, and technology. Now, most of it has become superfluous after all this the discussions. It's just that a couple of issues as far as threats is concerned. I suspect that in addition to, we've got about, if you do a back of the envelope calculation, we've got about 50 conventional submarines in the Indian Ocean. Many of them Chinese. The fact that they're Chinese also makes it easy for the Chinese to have bases in countries where they've exported submarines to. If they have bases here, then they avoid the constraints of the first island chain, the choke points on the east, and they avoid this 3,000 nautical mile transit. So it's an issue when we look at the number of submarines. So that is a threat that I see. And also the undersea autonomous warfare, to my mind, is going to prove even more disruptive than the surface maritime autonomous warfare. So this is something that we need to be prepared for. And that is why UDA is important. Mines, you are aware, we've got a shelving coast of the Arabian Sea, and it is soft mud and clay. Therefore, mine-like objects, they tend to sink. And that makes the task of locating them even more difficult. And we know that most of our adversaries have got very large inventory of mines. You see what Iran, the kind of chaos it's creating in Straits of Hormuz because of mining. Then you look at targets. I think Jaggi explained this entire thing about undersea cables. We have a host of critical infrastructure, whether it is undersea telecommunication cables, energy pipelines carrying oil, gas, green hydrogen, power cables, and a bewildering array of offshore installations for resource extraction. And undersea cables, you're aware, 99 or 97, whatever percent, 99% of intercontinental traffic is taking place on undersea cables. Every time you pick up your phone to ask to chat GPT something or order something on Amazon, you are actually using the undersea cables. If you don't have that, the entire economic lifeline of the country can be lost. And you've seen what kind of damage this whole the Chinese have created in the Baltics. They've cut natural gas pipelines, they've cut undersea cables. There is a situation very interestingly mentioned by one of the CEOs of a big data communication network. He said that we are really not too far away from entire countries becoming digitally inaccessible when the one or two cables that connect them go down. You have a situation, we've got 24 submarine undersea cables coming, and they're going to increase them. There are countries that have one or two. What happened to Tonga? Tonga, in a couple of years back in 2019, they lost that undersea cable, and they were completely blacked out from the internet for more than a week. And the entire financial transaction, everything goes. So this line cutting of undersea cables is something that we need to be really worried about. When we say that you've got 24 undersea cables, we cannot really rest in peace, because the utilization, what happens if one of the cables gets cut, you reroute to another cable. But the point is, our undersea cables are already 80 to 90% utilized, and the utilization is even going up further. So you will not have the bandwidth to reroute traffic. Even one cable cut is going to cause you a great deal of damage. And of course, that's why the United Nations General Assembly has designated undersea cables as critical information infrastructure that has to be protected. So my first point not first meaning, first recommendation is that like the Royal Navy has started deploying ships, auxiliaries for undersea cable protection, like the French have evolved a seabed warfare strategy. I think as Rudra and you all mentioned, I think we must come up with a seabed warfare strategy of how we're going to protect this critical information infrastructure and how we're going to use the seas. Similarly, there's an initiative by Singapore Ministry of Defense called the GUIDE. It's the guiding principle for underwater infrastructure defense exchange. Basically, it is a coordination and cooperation mechanism for protection of undersea infrastructure. I personally feel that India must join it sooner than later. So, and of course, we've already talked about offshore. When you talk of terrain, there are a couple of things that in the Indian Ocean region, which are unique in the Indian Ocean region. Already, the tropical part, Arnab has pointed out. One is, of course, the entry-exit is through choke points. All entry-exit to the Indian Ocean. So if you have to focus on monitoring against submarines or underwater manned vehicles, we need to focus on these. And therefore, put a lot of effort. As a Navy, we are putting a lot of effort on the choke points. Another unique feature is the shallow water, the continental shelf, which extends up to 50 to 60 nautical miles from the coast, especially of the west coast. And this has implications on mine warfare, as I explained, and sonar operations. So a combination of salinity, temperature gradient, they make sonar operations very complex. And generally, it's the low frequency sonar exploiting convergence zones that and bottom bounds, etc., which are effective in the waters of the Indian Ocean region. So when we plan for sonars, it has to be low frequency, it has to be bottom bounds and using the convergence zone. And we in the Navy for a long time have been only looking at bathing, that means temperature versus depth profile, and calculating our estimated sonar ranges, etc. Is that right? We've been doing that mostly. But we need to study this undersea like an infantry officer. You're an infantry officer. Infantry officer studies terrain. So that is how undersea has to be studied. There are ridges, various underwater ridges for bottom bounds, convergence zones, sound velocity profiles, areas of upwelling which bring whales and false contacts, snapping shrimp is already brought out, underwater currents that will be very important when we deploy undersea gliders. So our professionals as a Navy, we have now started putting in more, but not enough, is that we need to understand things, details like the Rainio hotspot, the 90-degree East Ridge, the Investigator Ridge, Carlsberg Ridge, North Equatorial Currents, the counter currents, South Equatorial Ocean Dipole, what all these mean for underwater domain awareness. So the whole thinking has to now transform as a Navy. And I think Jaggi covered the Chinese research vessels. They are doing an extremely sophisticated job. On the surface, what to tell others is that we are just looking at how monsoons affect climate and near China, or they are helping Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar do surveys for the continental shelf. But actually, we know that they are collecting oceanographic data, hydrographic data, and ocean acoustic data for military purposes. I just went on the net, and based on their survey, the Talian Naval Academy and the Department of Military Oceanographic China, they have evolved highly accurate simulations. They're predicting the convergence zone. I just told you convergence zone is going to be very important for sonar operation. This is what they're doing. Out of the 24 machine learning algorithms that they have, the most accurate models are predicting a convergence zone with 85%, 82.5% accuracy within 1 kilometer error. That's the kind of job they're doing. And I think we have to work to make convergence zone slight rules so that we can take advantage and underwater domain much better. Of course, as far as technology is concerned, there are so many issues that we are grappling with. We have to grapple with something like underwater communications, energy storage, batteries, issues of position finding and navigation, networking, dealing with pressure. Because more than 75% of the Indian Ocean region is greater than 3,000 meters in depth. How are you going to deal with pressure? How are you going to deal with corrosion, salinity, etc.? And over and above that, we discussed there are data sets are a must in the field of ocean acoustics to ensure proper analysis and exploitation of underwater domain. And most importantly, automation in decision making, where people like Sarvam will come in. So we are trying to consolidate these data sets, but like people mentioned, they are all over the place with different organizations and penny packets in different organizations, and we need to work. So what I wanted to convey in my submission is that there's too many potential threats, too much ocean, and several technological challenges to achieve the desired underwater domain awareness that we're looking for. And the way ahead is multi-pronged, integrated UDA ecosystem. We'll have to create combined satellite-borne systems, imagery, distributed acoustic sensor technology, long-distance detection systems, fixed and mobile, autonomous underwater vehicles, to create a seamless UDA system. And ultimate aim, like I mentioned, is that UDA is to be considered an integral part of MDA, not divorced from. And this is my personal view, and that is why I've been pushing that the Indo-Pacific Partnership for Maritime Domain Awareness (IPMDA) must include. For the Westerners, it's very convenient to say that let us park UDA outside India. I've been insisting that you have to put in UDA into MDA, at least put the fixed undersea cables, etc., into UDA so that, or put the fishing details into UDA so that we get a buy-in from the smaller countries. They will understand that, okay, it matters. Capacity, capability building we've discussed. In regional partnerships, whilst there is this tendency to say, okay, let's keep everything to ourselves, I don't think it's possible. If we have to gain technologies, if we have to gain best practices, if we have to gain the kind of capabilities that the West has invested in for many, many years, we will have to give Quad a chance. Japan, France, Australia, US, we'll have to engage them. And we are doing so. The Navy is doing so. India is doing so through things like USN UDA Framework, the ISET initiative on critical and emerging technologies, the INDESX, the India-US Defense Accelerator Ecosystem, and the Asia Autonomous System Industry Alliance. And I mentioned this, that we must collate all these data. I think we have to work much harder on acoustic data collection, data storage, data processing, and analysis capacity. And like I said, we must have a seabed warfare strategy. Join the guide, Singapore MINDEF initiative. I'll stop here. Already taken from 15-20 minutes. Thank you.